I want to bring Steve Mc Nally for a 5-minute chat about how he's took on the council in the past. Steve, as a brief introduction, Chinatown was one of the first issues to hit the development world. Steve brought all of the investors from all over the world into one group, and down to Steve as to why they'll probably end up with 80p in the pound, probably, but that's down to Steve. Steve, do you want to come up?
The old saying is, how do you follow that? Just to make the point, I'm going to pick on a couple of people's comments. So John Hanlon mentioned that he was on his own and he was taking all the stuff, and that's what happens if you're on your own. I've done it. 2017, I asked Joe Anderson to resign because of Chinatown. He said no. I went to the cabinet and said, would you tell him to resign? He said no. So I went to the 55 Labour councillors who had the power then to go to Labour itself and say, let's get rid of these people who are running our city. And he didn't, because they all had vested interests of their own that they wanted to cover, which is why they've all got to go. We call them on the internet the silent 90. And you've got 85 new ones in, and they will be one of them. But you have to have a collective around them. So what I'm going to tell you about is 2 sites that we worked on over as a collective. There was one which was the nursing homes in Speak and in Anfield, and the other one is a recent one, which was the school being moved from Fazakerley to Speak. And these are all done on the what was the word again? Delegated power. The idea is that you delegate the powers so someone else can go and do the dirty work. Now, in terms of the nursing home on Galloway first, that was in 2020, in the middle of the pandemic. Now, did anyone hear about it? 2 big nursing homes that were going to get shut. Well, that's how bad it is, because they were actually going to dump over 200 elderly people on the road in the October. They told everyone in the August. Now, all these families were panicking because they had nowhere to take them. But it was the council's nursing homes. But the people who were running it said, no, we're not going to run it anymore. So the council said, oh, we'll sell them. Now, we know there's ulterior motives for why the council wanted to sell these amazing buildings. They'd only spent, a couple of years ago, 8 million on each. Because they look like hotels. And there was issues that went on about that. So that's behind the scenes of what goes on. There's always an ulterior motive for what this council does. So we got together, I went to meet people in Anfield, there was a load of people, all looked stressed, all looked fed up about the situation. I explained to them, Joe works for you, like the council work for you. They're not there because you felt like doing it, they work for you, you pay the wages. So to get rid of them, you have to be collective. So we explained how we could do it. We started doing things outside the actual nursing homes in Speak and in Anfield. And I was more involved at the Anfield end because it was easier to get to, and the Speak had their group. But collectively, we took on Joe. Joe wanted to sell them, he wouldn't stand down. We had the TV crews there from BBC, they all put it on, so we started getting hot for Joe. And Joe was coming to the next year was going to be when he was going to go into election mode, because in 21 he was supposed to get into the election. So because of that, he started panicking. He sent his bagman down to the site and said to the leader, it was an amazing woman, who I won't name now, but she was the core of everything that we went through, and we worked on the strategy. She told him, no, I'm not going to shut up. She also turned around and said to every councillor, you're not saying you're from Labour, you're not saying you're from the Lib Dems, you're not saying you're from the Greens, you're going to say, I'm such and such, and I'm here to stop these nursing homes being taken over, being sold. Because of that, Joe then made another text to this guy, and he got up on the stand, and he turned around and said, Joe's told me to tell everybody in that building, don't get a new job. He told them they all had to get out, all the staff as well as the nursing homes, the elderly. Don't move, Joe's going to fix it, he's not going to sell them now. That's because the collective all turned around and said, on your bike. That's why you all have to create collectives in your own ward to back someone you believe in that ward. And we get 85 new ones, of which one takes going to be one. The more important one, through these delegated powers, is a situation of the schools. Now, everyone understands what SEN means. Yeah, okay. So that's the kids who've got difficulties in school, they have their own schools at certain times when they're in a standard school. There's one in Fazakerley that was down to be moved to Speak. That meant 200 kids, all with learning difficulties, being carted every day, all the way to Speak and all the way back. The delegated powers were given to idiots who didn't understand the situation. All the parents had told them continually about it. And then we had a meeting which was pretty much the nucleus of what's gone on here, on the top of the Shankly. And we were talking about this, but there was a couple of people, Kevin, there's a Green candidate, in Everton Ward. He was there, but he couldn't get involved. And there's a young mum who was there, desperate for someone to help. So I said, let's get someone together. So we got a lot of the parents together, created an organisation, which then stood for the school. They went to the council and said, you're not doing it. They carried on saying to the council. I got them a meeting with the commissioner. The commissioner said, it's not in our remit, but I'll do what I can. 2 weeks later, the idea of moving them 200 kids for Zachary to speak, which was a stupid idea in the first place, gone. We're not doing it. But there's still a potential they could pull strings and do other stuff, so we're sitting on that. But the fact is, that school, they were adamant about moving, just like they're adamant about selling nursing homes, didn't happen. Because the people turned around, got together, coordinated in that area and fought it, which is what this is about. That's why an example of it now is Malibon. They have had all kinds of problems, but they're going to have 2 people who will stand in that ward, and they will back those 2 people to take out the 2 people who will stand for whoever's up against them, because that's the collective way of doing it. And that's what this is all about. It's working together so we get 85 new people with new ideas and take over the council, because the ultimate, which is what Lawrence was mentioning then, is to find out what's been getting stolen, find out who's corrupt, including the employed staff. It's not just the elected ones, it's the employed ones. So you've got to get rid of all of them at the same time. And that's what you can do, because if we can take over the council through this umbrella organisation, afterwards there'll be a collective and it will become something that every other area in the country can do. Because we do things differently. If we're going to do something, we'll do it. Everyone knows that. If we've ever got to do something, we'll all collect together and we'll do it. And we've proved it in those 2 sites. A bunch of old people are going to get kicked out on the curb, and 200 kids, the most vulnerable people in our city. And the guys who were running the city didn't have a clue what they were doing and would have just done it if the people hadn't stood up and said, you're not on. That's what you guys are the nucleus of. And we're going to do it in all the different areas. There's actually 64 wards, so there's 64 groups like Ballybone going to be set up on the back of this, and 85 people will stand in those wards. Because in some there's 3, some there's 2, some there's 1. And that's why we're all here tonight. That's why we'll be doing it at the next stage. So there is one other thing, and this again sums up the way Liverpool City Council works. Years ago, there was only 2 ways you could get a cab. One in a black act, which had a red plate on it, and one in a private eye without a red plate on it. Nowadays, anyone can put you in a cab, and you don't know if they're insured or anything. So the licensing committee, at this moment in time, don't do anything. They ignore the people who do the job themselves, like Jimmy and the Alliance of the Taxi Drivers. And they'll get on board, because we're going to turn around and say, right, there'll be a section of there'll be a community group that'll fight for the cab drivers, so the Liverpool cab drivers can have a decent wage, so they can actually go out and live their life. Because they used to. I mean, I always used to get jealous of the cab drivers, because I always thought, my uncle was one, he was always loaded. But the fact is, those lads can't live now. And that's wrong in a licensed authority that should have private hire and taxis. So that's another area. But you've got to get on board with it. And you've all got to go away to different places. And as Lawrence said, it's the domino effect. Everyone start talking, everyone go on the internet, everybody get together and make this happen. We haven't got much time, but it will work, because we've done it already. And the 2 I explained, they're not the only 2. There's loads of different things we've got on. And we want them to come on the internet and put their stories on there. Because the 2 I've just spoken to will go on, and a lot of the corruption will go on the internet. So you can all read it and we can pass the word on.